Chapter 6. Alicia sat looking over her steering wheel at the parking lot, clutching her extra-large coffee. It had been months since she had indulged in something so unnecessary. When driving around didn't calm her nerves, she decided that caffeine would work better. Instead of making her jittery, it always made her calmer. It was almost noon, and she hadn't even managed what she thought would be the most challenging task of the day. The temp agency sat in a strip mall surrounded by clothing and craft stores. She watched the people, mostly women, walk in and out without a care in the world. Alicia wasn't so naive as to think that she could spot people's problems plastered on their faces. However, it was nice to momentarily indulge in a life where she had nothing more pressing in her day than to pick out a new pair of jeans for her son. Although he did need new jeans, his current pants were already creeping up his ankles. Hopefully, he wouldn't have another growth spurt until she managed to find a new job. She looked down at her $4 coffee with guilt, unable to swallow the last few sips. Alicia was gripped with fear. Some of the anxiety was old, a trauma that she thought she had overcome, still fresh and raw. Some of the fear was new, such as the fear of how she would now support her son. She had managed to tuck some money away, but not even enough to pay rent for next month. Alicia felt the anxiety creeping over her, taking away her ability to breathe. She tapped 2 fingers on the steering wheel, counting to 30 slowly, breathing with the count. The anxiety hadn't stopped, so she allowed herself to do it again. She paused at the end of the second time, but she knew she had to do it a third time. You could do it once, or you had to do it 3 times. If you didn't stop at 3 times, you couldn't stop until you did it 10 times. It had been a while since she had to do it 10 times, longer still since 10 times wasn't even enough. After 3 rounds, she extended her fingers, stretching them, and then curled them into fists. She was exhausted. Not the exhaustion that made her want to sleep, but the kind that ate away at her. It was too much to think about the past and too much to think about the future. She was tired of trying to be who everyone wanted her to be, and failing at it repeatedly. If it weren't for her son... But there was her son, and she was all he had. Alicia looked in the rearview mirror, fixed her hair, put on some lipstick, and pretended to look normal. She opened the car door, double-checking that she had everything she needed. Then Alicia readjusted her outfit to make sure everything was on straight and as professional-looking as possible. Then she turned and walked towards the building. The front of the temp agency was made entirely of glass, allowing her to see what she was walking into before she ever opened the door. The office was full of white desks made out of inch-thick wood, making the space overly bright. There was a larger rectangular white desk right where she would walk in. Behind it were square-shaped white desks, lined up in a row against the white back wall. In between, there were white tables with chairs. Even the carpet and walls were white. The only color belonged to the silver legs of the chairs and then the people. The office seemed to capture the sunlight and use it to create its own glow. Briefly, Alicia thought about going back to her car to pick up her sunglasses. Then she shook off the suggestion and walked inside. "How can I help you?" The receptionist had a wide grin, silky brown skin, and tight black locks. Alicia felt herself grinning back, and the tension started to release from her body. "Hi, I'm here to look into getting a new position." "Then you came to the right place. Have you been here before?" "No, I've never used a temp agency before." "There's a first time for everything. Did you fill out the paperwork online?" "Oh, no, I didn't know I was supposed to." "No worries. Follow me." The woman led Alicia to the side wall, where there were 3 more square white desks. Each desk held a silver computer monitor. "Sit down here and follow the prompts on the screen. It will ask you to fill out the paperwork and then have you take some basic assessments so that we can gauge where you will be the best fit." "Thank you," Alicia said, as she sat down at one of the desks and began working on the computer. It was nearly 2 hours before Alicia finished with all the assessments. First, she had to retype her entire resume, even though it was all there ready to hand to the center. Then it went into an even more detailed analysis of her capabilities. They asked about software that Alicia had never heard about. Feeling inadequate in her skills, she finally just checked everything she recognized. She did not realize that that meant she had to prove that she knew about the various software. She had to pass tests on everything that she had marked. Thankfully, most of the software was relatively easy to figure out, and she was sure that she passed. By the time she looked up, it was 2, and her son got out of school in less than an hour. Alicia tried not to worry. She had to keep going the best she could. If she ran out of time, she would excuse herself to get her son. She talked herself through this as she walked back to the receptionist's desk. The receptionist had her wait at another white chair, this time at the front of the office. It was not very long before one of the recruiters from the back of the room escorted her to their square white desk. It started well. The recruiter was impressed with her testing scores. It shortly went downhill. She didn't have a lot of experience. Her period of time at jobs was not very long. She never finished college. Her requested work hours were not very realistic. It ended with a firm handshake and the recruiter telling her, "We will call you if we have something come up that is more part-time. It happens, and it is harder to find people who only want part-time work, so there is a chance." Alicia left the temp agency deflated. She was so proud of how hard she had worked to pull herself up, but it did not seem to be enough. She would have to go out tomorrow and try to find another retail job. She could also put in for waitressing, but the hours while her son was at school didn't pay very well. It was why she had moved into an office job. Alicia was lost in thought, trying to plan out her next move and not let the anxiety overtake her. She wasn't sure why she even looked up. Maybe she felt the man looking directly at her. He was standing next to a black SUV, parked a few spots away from her car. The man's eyes were covered with dark sunglasses that contrasted with his light blonde hair. The hair reminded her so much of that night. It wasn't common to see such sun-bleached hair this far north, but it probably would not have triggered her if she hadn't been to the club earlier in the day. She tried her best to ignore the man as she walked back to her car.